Well, at 77 years old, I felt that I wasn't quite ready to accept old age. After many years of hiking and climbing in the US and overseas, I was still up for another challenge. A friend gave me a guidebook on trekking in the Himalayas, which was all it took to plan a classic high pass 20-day, 120-mile trek in the shadow of Mount Everest. I call it my journey into thin air, the Himalaya, its people and peaks. The journey begins with my 32 elapsed hours to Kathmandu and got really lucky out of the window, sitting on the right side. There was Mount Everest. The first shock that I got was the traffic. No white lines, cars, motorcycles, bicycles, people going every which direction. One of the commercial drum shops. Of course, myself being a drummer, thought I'd pick up a couple drums, one for myself and one for my grandson. Hit the streets again. Traffic going every which way, very narrow streets, and I came to this shop where they were doing mandalas, very specialized painting. It's a Buddhist meditative paintings, students and masters alike. Hitting the streets again. That was the most amazing thing. I'd sit on a corner and watch all this massive activity going on. Just couldn't believe it. Pottery factory, and there's some of the pottery shops. There's just thousands of them. Anything you'd want. The men very westernized the way they dressed, and the women they dressed very well in their native costumes. Predominance of religious symbols, a great mix of Hindu and Buddhism. Sacred cows, maybe sacred monkeys, and thousands of dogs, and all kinds. Some of them very friendly, and some of them look pretty mean. From the monkey temple, I got an overview of Kathmandu. There's some of the close-up shots of downtown, believe it or not, downtown Kathmandu. Buddhist stupas everywhere, all kinds of shrines, all kinds of monkeys. Thousands of them. Caught one of them hanging by his toes, getting a drink of water, and as soon as he finished, he'd leave and another one would come do the same thing. A lot of wooden structures. There were predominantly old ones, and the new ones are stone because there's hardly any wood left in the area, so you can sort of tell the difference there. Beautiful 5-story temple. It's one of the main Durbar squares. A lot of restored structures there too. Some of them, many of them burned. And this is not even a weekend. There's just people everywhere, not just tourists, but a lot of locals. That's a public bathing area and washing area where they wash clothes and rugs and take and bathe themselves. This is a river where they cremate bodies, and the remains are disposed of into the river, and it ultimately flows in the Ganges, which is a sacred river in India. This is the last night before we went on the trek. Went to a typical Hindu restaurant with entertainment. You can see the mandala in the background. A mandala. Yep, we're loading up the next morning. Got up at 3:45 in the morning. Waited around in an airport. Took off for Lukla, which is the last spot before our trek. Some of the views of the Himalaya that we got on the way. The Lukla airport is rated as being one of the most dangerous in the world. It's right in a valley. Heading off through some of the villages. We went some of the main trail here, which is the main road, which isn't a road, it's just a path. Those are our porters heading to our first campsite. Villages are right there. You go right in front of their houses. Drying some produce out to store for winter. Religious symbols everywhere, predominantly Buddhist. The Sherpas are predominantly Buddhist. Dozens and dozens of suspension bridges, some of them very high, some of them very low. Little boy doing the morning wash. Permanent camps. We had permanent camps, wilderness camps, and then 5 nights in tea houses. Could always hear the rush of the Kosi River as well as waterfalls everywhere. 6:15 in the morning, we had washi-washi time. That's what the guide called it. You can see some of the loads. Unbelievable loads that some of these porters carry. Our first morning in the Himalaya. Sometimes villages are very small and some of them are large, and all of the yak trains and the porters, everybody goes through and uses this. There's only one trail through all of these areas. Our kids during their washing duties. Getting a little higher in the afternoon, the clouds come in and sometimes the views are obscured, but most of the time we had very good weather. There's just waterfalls everywhere. Couldn't take enough pictures of waterfalls. "6 a.m. every morning, we were welcomed by hot tea time. The porters pack up. They are usually out of there before we even have breakfast at 7 o'clock. Sagarmatha is another name for Mount Everest National Park. The cakes look as good as you'd find at bakeries around here. This is the highest one that we crossed. That's probably a couple of 100 feet and up above the Kosi River. Huge suspension bridge. Prayer flags always on them. 5-colored prayer flags. Winds blowing. Our first view of Mount Everest. Right before we got to the village of Namche, the major village in the Himalaya. morning we are heading off higher, getting up into the higher peaks of the Himalaya. Great feeling to come up around the corner, see the tip of a classic mountain, and the higher you hike a little farther, it just looms in front of you. That's my favorite peak. That's Ama de Blanc. Pretty much everybody's favorite peak. It's just a classic look. Unfortunately missed fall colors, but there were a few here and there. Those are yak dung patties. I call them hamburger patties, that they gather and use them for firewood. Heat their stoves in the winter. It's a high altitude yak. They grow most of their crops up there, predominantly potatoes and rice, vegetables. The yak trains go right through town. That's the main trail that goes through all these villages. This is one of the tea houses. We got one night there. We stayed in the tea house. This is breakfast before we head out to a higher elevation. So we're about 12,000 feet here. Those are our 5 guides. We have had a support staff, including those 5 guides, a support staff of 30 porters, cooks, and guides. Clouds always seem to come in the afternoon, anywhere from noon till 3 o'clock, and sometimes at obscure views, and sometimes heading for another shoulder of a peak, and you'd see another magnificent view of the upper Himalaya. Refrigerator on a porter's back. Tembochi Temple. It was all in the clouds, but we did experience one of their prayer sessions in the afternoon. Full Buddhist prayer sessions with the Buddhist monks. Very lucky. Reflection shot in one of the shop windows. A very old mantra. The older ones are very, very worn. Some of the new ones have fresh paint on them. Another good view of a lenticular cloud over Mount Everest. Another distant view. We'll be right under that in a few days. A lot of terraced villages. They grow all their crops there, and it keeps a lot of the wild yaks and the cows and so forth out. Keep them out of the vegetation areas. One of the prettiest yaks that I saw up there. Not grazing. That's what the guides develop. Many, many thousands of miles. This huge, huge calves. They were all very small people, most of them, carrying loads, as well as some of the guides carried some of the packs. That's a typical permanent camp during the trekking season. This is our view from the permanent camp, just spectacular peaks. Most of those peaks there are, 22, 23, 24,000 feet. Had full moon on the trip, which when you had to get up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, everything glowed and the stars were just brilliant. There's the porters getting ready to set up our next camp. A lot of pretty fall colors, not wildflowers, but some of the last turning of the leaves. A lot of low vegetation. The vegetation grows up there till about 15,000 feet, whereas here it's only about 12. coming over a hill, and you see the tips of the mountains, and by the time you get there, you look down into an extremely deep valley with these 24, 25, 26,000 foot peaks right in front of you. That's Lhotse and Nuptse, if any of you are familiar with that, right across from the Khumbu Icefall, and then Everest is on the other side. It's our camp, Kangmala Pass. Afternoon tea. Nice tent. It looks really rough there, but we're sleeping right on the ground and we're all toasty. We're at about 17,000 feet there. That's I don't know whether that's morning or evening meal, but anyway, it's cold. We spent 6-7 nights. It froze every night. There's a nice view of the peaks in the afternoon. Not real clear, but very cold. We spent 11 days above 15,000 feet on our way to Kangmala Pass. Left upper center of the peak, there's our prayer flags right at the pass. We did about 2,000 vertical feet of climbing that day. That's looking down the other side. Some of the emerald pools and lakes, peaks all around you, just incredible views. It's hard to capture it in pictures. And we're heading for the little village of Lhotse, or Loboche, sorry. Pomori, if any of you are familiar with that, on the Khumbu Glacier. Pomori Peak going across the Khumbu Glacier. No trails. Guides just know where to go. Rocks and boulders and calving of ice and falling rocks, but certainly not too dangerous. Getting close to the end of the day. We're heading toward Everest Base Camp, which is out of Gorak Shep. Pomori on the extreme left, about 23,000 foot peak. Looking back into the Khumbu Glacier area and the western Khum. Everest Base Camp, center left. Not real impressive. It's right at the tongue of the Khumbu Icefall. There's Pomori. We hiked up that trail to the center left, up to Kalapatar, which is 18,300 feet. Along the way, there's a snowcock, very beautiful. They look very much like a grouse. There's the trail. The group's ready to head up that Kalapatar on the left center with Pomori in the background. Those are East Indian monuments to their god that's up there. That's yours truly with Everest in the background. Heading back down, looking at the view where we just came from, down on the Khumbu Glacier. We're fortunate to see afternoon sunset shots like that. Another wilderness camp. That's the day it snowed on us, off and on. Wind, cold, but that's what we pay the big bucks for. On our way to Chola Pass. 3 guides right there. That's what the inside of one of the tents, that's my bunk mate. This is sort of a before and after. It's our campsite at the base of Chola, and that's what it looked like in the morning at 5:30. I had to get up and go to the bathroom, and there was all the snow and everything was frozen. Getting geared up. 8 o'clock in the morning was our time to start trekking again. Chola Pass is about 17,500. That's a glacier right before we get to the pass itself. There's the cooks and porters washing dishes after lunch. which they did every day. They did lunch on the way. And by the time we got back to where the next spot, they had all the tents and everything set up. Gazumpa Glacier, longest, biggest one in the Himalayas. We had to cross. It's about 1.5 miles wide and 36 miles long. Heading toward Goikyo. Crossing the Gazumpa Glacier. Snowcocks everywhere. There are just dozens of them running around, but they're very shy. Hard to get a good shot of. Now we're approaching Goikyo. Looking down on the glacier from one of the ridges. Goikyo in the bottom center. Looking over at Cholatse and Loboche, which we were on the other side of just a few days before. Summit of Goikyo-ri. 18,100 feet. Everest in the background. Nice shot in the afternoon. Everest is in the background, but you can't see it. It's in the clouds. There's our crew of 30, including our 5 guides. They supported us the whole way. There were 16 of us total. 13 of us finished the 3 high pass trek. We're ready to do the last pass. That was Renho-La. There, the prayer flag's way up there, and I was just about shot by the time I took that picture. There we are, taking a break at Renho-La. We're ready after the 3rd pass, which was the last one. We're heading down the other side. We just have about 3 days left. Typical terraced villages, still spectacular scenery. Suspension bridge over really the only major gorge that we went across, with all of the Buddhist paintings and mantras and other kinds of writings all over. You can see the 5 colors. Again, they're significant in what they stand for. Last view of Namche Bazaar. There's my favorite shopkeeper. She was just a lovely lady. The peoples seem to be quite happy. Even the porters carrying the heavy loads of lumber, and I'll bet you that lumber weighs 70 or 80 pounds. A construction site, any of you contractor type people, there's no power. They had to do everything by hand, including shaping all those stones. Back to Lukla for our air flight to Kathmandu. You know, this was not only an adventurous trek into the highest and most impressive mountains in the world, but a culturally uplifting experience as well.